There are places on this planet that whisper a question so profound, it can unravel everything you think you know about the past. They are quiet places of stone and wind, yet they shout a defiant challenge to the story of human history. We begin our journey here, in Lebanon, at the ruins of Baalbek. Here lie 3 colossal blocks of stone, known as the Trilithon. Each one weighs an estimated 800 tons. Let that number sink in. 800 tons. Quarried, lifted from the earth, transported over uneven ground, and hoisted into place with unnerving precision, forming the foundation of a Roman temple that came thousands of years later. Our most powerful mobile cranes today, the titans of modern engineering, would buckle under the strain of lifting a single one. Yet, we are told that ancient men, armed with little more than bronze chisels, log rollers, and raw determination, accomplished this feat. It is a story we are taught to accept. But stand here, in the shadow of these silent giants, and the story begins to feel less like history, and more like a myth designed to conceal a deeper, more unsettling truth. This isn't an isolated anomaly. The mystery of Baalbek echoes across the globe, a chorus of impossibility. Travel halfway around the world to the mountains of Peru, to the fortress of Sacsayhuaman. Here, the challenge isn't just weight, but impossible geometry. Boulders the size of small houses, some weighing over 120 tons, are fit together like a continent-sized jigsaw puzzle. There is no mortar. The seams are so tight that you cannot slip a sheet of paper between them. These are not simple cubes, they are complex, polygonal shapes with a dozen or more interlocking faces, a style that seems almost organic, as if the stone was once soft as clay. How was this done? The official narrative again offers us simple tools and boundless manpower, but it fails to explain the casual, almost effortless mastery of geology and engineering on display. Then we go further, not just across the globe, but back in time, plunging into the ocean off the coast of Japan. Here, submerged beneath 60 feet of water, lies the Yonaguni Monument. A sprawling complex of terraces, carved steps, and monolithic structures that appear for all the world to be an artificial, man-made city. Geologists tell us that for this site to have been on dry land, it must date back to the end of the last ice age, at least 10,000 years ago. This is a time when mainstream archaeology tells us that humanity was living in scattered, primitive hunter-gatherer tribes, incapable of organizing to build so much as a stone hut, let alone a submerged ceremonial center. 3 locations, 3 different continents, 3 impossible feats of engineering that stand in silent, monolithic defiance of the accepted historical record. History, as it's written in textbooks, has a neat and tidy answer for all of this. It's a story of human ingenuity, of brute force, of armies of laborers toiling for generations under the lash of powerful kings. It's a tale of ramps and levers, of grit and sweat. And in many cases, that story is true. Humans are capable of incredible things. But the math is a stubborn and inconvenient thing. The sheer logistics of quarrying, moving, and placing an 800-ton block with precision using primitive tools is a problem that modern engineers, with all their computational power, struggle to solve. The story we are told requires us to believe in a level of coordination, patience, and physical power that strains credulity. It asks us to accept that our ancestors, with their shorter lifespans and more precarious existence, somehow accomplished feats that we, with all our technology, would find nearly impossible. When the logic of the physical world and the official historical narrative diverge so sharply, where do we turn for answers? Perhaps we turn to the one record that mainstream science so often dismisses as fantasy, myth. Because beneath the layers of allegory and superstition, there is a strangely consistent story told by nearly every culture on Earth. It is the story of a time before us, an epoch ruled by a different kind of being. The Greeks called them Titans. The Norse, the Jotnar. The Irish, the Fomorians. The sacred texts of the Hebrews speak of the Nephilim, the giants in the earth in those days. These are not just tales of tall men. They are stories of beings of immense size and strength, beings who were the original stonemasons, the architects of the primordial world. For centuries, we have relegated these stories to the realm of folklore, dismissing them as the fanciful inventions of a pre-scientific mind trying to explain a frightening world. But could every single one of our ancestors, from every corner of the globe, have independently invented the exact same, specific lie? What if these myths are not fantasies, but fossils? Not fairy tales, but a kind of species memory, the faded, distorted echo of a genuine historical reality. We have been searching for the answer to these megalithic mysteries in all the wrong places. We've been looking for a lost technology, a forgotten machine, an unknown energy source. We have assumed the builders were like us, and that they simply knew something we have forgotten. But what if the anomaly isn't the stones, or the builders? What if the anomaly is the world they were built upon? What if the very laws that govern our reality were different in that distant past? We are born into a world governed by what we believe are unbreakable rules. And none is more constant, more intimate, than the force that holds us to the ground, the steady, ever-present pull of gravity. It dictates the size of every living thing, the height of every mountain, the very shape of our world. It is the ultimate constant. But what if it wasn't? What if that fundamental law of the universe was once a variable? Before we existed, before our recorded history began, did a race of giants perish when the Earth's gravity suddenly increased? What if the mystery of these impossible stones isn't a story about forgotten engineering, but a story about a forgotten Earth? To entertain the possibility of giant humans, we must first accept a far more demonstrable fact: we live on the evolutionary ruins of a giant world. The evidence is not buried in obscure texts or whispered myths, it is written into the very fossil record of our planet. The deep past was not just a different time, it was a different dimension of life, a world that specialized in the colossal. This prehistoric Earth is Exhibit A for our hypothesis. Imagine walking through the wetlands of ancient Argentina, 95 million years ago. The ground trembles, not from an earthquake, but from the footsteps of a living mountain. This is Argentinosaurus, a sauropod dinosaur estimated to have reached 115 feet in length and weighed up to 100 tons. 100 tons. That's the weight of a dozen bull elephants combined. Its heart alone would have been the size of a small car, pumping blood up a neck that could crane its head above a 6-story building. This was not a freak of nature, it was a successful, thriving animal, one of many titans that dominated the landscape for millions of years. The sheer biomechanical challenge of its existence is staggering. How could a creature of such biblical proportions even support its own weight, let alone move, eat, and survive? The gigantism wasn't limited to the land. Picture a primordial swamp, 112 million years ago. What looks like a floating log is, in fact, the snout of Sarcosuchus, that supercroc. 40 feet long, weighing 10 tons, it was an ambush predator that could have dragged the largest of dinosaurs to a watery grave. Its skull alone was longer than an average human is tall. This was a world where monsters were real, where the scale of the apex predators dwarfs anything we know today. Even the skies offered no escape. Journey back 300 million years to the Carboniferous period, and you might hear a loud, buzzing hiss from above. It's not a bird, it's Meganeura, a dragonfly with the wingspan of an eagle. This was no delicate insect, it was an airborne predator, a ghost of a heavier-than-air world, its presence a fundamental challenge to our understanding of biology. Now, mainstream science offers a neat, and partially correct, explanation for some of this gigantism, particularly the colossal insects. The argument centers on oxygen. During periods like the Carboniferous, atmospheric oxygen levels were as high as 35%, compared to our modern 21%. Insects breathe through a network of tiny tubes called tracheae, which passively deliver oxygen to their cells. In a hyperoxygenated world, this system is far more efficient, allowing their bodies to grow to previously unimaginable sizes. It's a compelling, elegant theory, and it's certainly part of the answer. But it is not the whole answer. While higher oxygen levels can fuel a larger body, they do not repeal the laws of physics. They do not lessen the brutal, unforgiving tyranny of mass. Every step that a 100-ton Argentinosaurus took, every beat of its massive heart, was a war waged against the crushing force of gravity. A richer oxygen supply doesn't make bones stronger or ligaments less prone to snapping under immense weight. The problem of structural integrity remains. The accepted explanation feels convenient but incomplete. It's like explaining how a skyscraper's lights stay on without ever mentioning its steel foundation. There appears to be a fundamental piece of the environmental equation missing, a factor that would make gigantism not just possible, but perhaps even an evolutionary advantage. Something is absent from the official story. And it is in that absence that we find even stranger, more unsettling evidence. These are the fossils that don't fit, the data points that get filed away under controversial or unexplained. In the limestone beds of the Paluxy River in Texas, something remarkable was discovered: dinosaur tracks, clear and distinct, preserved in the Cretaceous mud. But lying alongside them, and in some cases, overlapping them, were other tracks that look eerily, undeniably human, but on a scale that defies belief. These are the so-called giant tracks, footprints of a bipedal creature stretching up to 18 inches in length. For decades, these finds have been the subject of fierce debate. Science has largely dismissed them as clever forgeries or misidentified dinosaur tracks. And perhaps some of them are. But the sheer volume of these anomalous discoveries, not just in Texas but around the world, gives one pause. Are they all fakes? Are they all mistakes? Or are they glitches in the historical record, fossilized whispers of a reality we are not yet prepared to accept? They suggest that the age of megafauna might have also been the age of megahumanoids. The possibility is there, staring back at us from the ancient stone, that the planet itself was once built to a different scale, a scale that accommodated not only giant beasts, but a giant form of humanity, whose memory now survives only in myth, and in these impossible, petrified footprints left in the mud of a forgotten world. The answer to the mystery of the giant world isn't buried in rock or bone, but in a code. It's a universal law of mathematics and physics, a rule so fundamental that it governs the shape of everything from a single cell to a star. It is a principle known as the square-cube law, and it is the brutal, unforgiving tyrant of biology. The law itself is elegantly simple. When you make an object larger, its surface area increases by the square of its growth, but its volume, and therefore its mass, increases by the cube. Picture a simple cube. If you double its length, its surface area becomes 4 times larger. But its volume, and its weight, becomes 8 times larger. Strength is a function of area, while weight is a function of volume. This is the mathematical prison in which all life on Earth is trapped. It is why you cannot have an ant the size of an elephant. If you were to scale up an ant to that size, its strength would increase by a factor of thousands, but its mass would increase by a factor of millions. Its spindly legs, perfectly suited for its tiny frame, would instantly snap under the colossal weight of its own body. It would be crushed into oblivion by the simple act of existing. This law is the reason we are the size we are. It's why blue whales, the largest animals on our planet, can only survive in the buoyant, weight-reducing environment of the ocean. On land, a whale's own mass would crush its internal organs and skeleton. The square-cube law dictates the upper limit of life. It's the universe's speed limit on size. So how then did the 100-ton Argentinosaurus walk the Earth? How did a world full of biological titans thrive for millions of years, apparently in defiance of this fundamental rule? We have been looking at the problem from the wrong angle. We have assumed that the creatures were the variable, that they somehow evolved a magical solution to the problem of mass. But what if the creatures weren't the variable at all? What if the constant was the variable? What if the force they were fighting against, gravity itself, was weaker? Imagine a world unburdened. A planet where the pull of gravity is just 10, or 20, or even 30% less than what we experience today. Suddenly, the entire equation of life changes. The mathematical prison of the square-cube law still exists, but the bars have been spread wider. In this lighter world, a 100-ton animal no longer needs impossibly thick bones to support its weight. A human-like creature could grow to 10 or 12 feet tall without its heart needing to be an impossibly powerful pump, and without its spine crumbling under the load. Gigantism would no longer be a biological anomaly, it would be a viable evolutionary path. The megalithic structures of Baalbek and Sacsayhuaman are no longer impossible feats of engineering, but simply the work of beings whose strength-to-weight ratio was fundamentally superior to our own, in a world where an 800-ton block was simply less of a burden. But for this to be true, the very foundation of our planet must have changed. How could the gravity of an entire world be altered? The question is so radical it's almost scientific heresy. Yet, on the fringes of geology and astrophysics, theories exist. One of the most controversial is the expanding Earth hypothesis. This idea proposes that our planet has not always been its current size. In the distant past, it was a smaller, denser world. Over eons, through processes we don't fully understand, perhaps phase changes in the core, or the slow accretion of cosmic material, the planet itself began to expand. As its radius increased, its surface gravity would have slowly, inexorably, grown stronger. The world of the dinosaurs, in this model, was a smaller, lighter world. They didn't evolve to overcome gravity, they were simply born before it became the crushing force it is today. Another, even more radical theory, looks not to the Earth itself, but to its place in the cosmos. What if Earth wasn't always a lonely wanderer, accompanied only by its moon? The Saturn theory, and similar models, speculates that our planet may have once been a satellite of a larger body, perhaps a brown dwarf or a gas giant like Saturn or Jupiter, that has since been ejected from our solar system or gone dark. In such a binary system, the gravitational dynamics would be completely different. Earth would have been in a state of gravitational equilibrium between our Sun and its larger, closer companion. The net gravitational pull on the surface could have been significantly less. Life would have evolved in a cosmic cradle, a gravitational sweet spot, allowing biology to reach for the sky. This companion star or planet would be a ghost in the machine of celestial mechanics, its only remaining evidence written in the impossible biology of a bygone age. These ideas challenge the very bedrock of geology and astronomy. They are bold, speculative, and far from proven. But they provide a physical mechanism for a world that the fossil record and ancient myths tell us might have existed. A world where the laws were different. A world built for giants. For this race of giants, and for all the colossal life that shared their world, their existence was a paradise. Not a paradise of ease, but one of perfect biological harmony. Their immense bodies were not a burden, they were a covenant with the physics of their home. They were perfectly, beautifully adapted to a gentle earth, a world where the pull of the ground was a soft embrace, not a crushing fist. For them, moving an 800-ton monolith would not have been a generational struggle against impossibility, but an act of art and engineering, a monumental dance between will and a compliant world. Their strength was a given, their scale was the norm. They were the masters of their environment because the environment was tailor-made for them. But they were living on borrowed time, inhabitants of a cosmic golden age whose lease was about to expire. The perfection they knew was not a permanent state of being, it was a fragile, temporary alignment of celestial mechanics. And the bill was about to come due. The trigger for the end of their world likely began as a silent, terrible beauty in the night sky. Perhaps it was a wanderer from the interstellar dark, a massive rogue planet or a dead star, passing through the outer edges of our solar system. It wouldn't need to strike us. It would only need to pass close enough for its immense gravitational well to disrupt the delicate dance of our own system. In this fleeting cosmic encounter, Earth could have been nudged into a different orbit, or its rotational speed and axial tilt could have been violently altered. Or perhaps the cataclysm was the capture of our own moon, a chaotic and brutal event that would have sent gravitational shock waves across the planet, forever changing its mass distribution and its pull. Alternatively, the betrayal may have come not from the heavens, but from the heart of the world itself. A sudden phase change in the planet's core, a catastrophic shift in the mantle, a planetary heart attack that irrevocably increased the world's density and, with it, the force of its gravity. Whether it was a swift, cosmic blow or a final, grinding gear shift from within, the result was the same. The fundamental constant had changed. The covenant was broken. For the giants, the first moment of the apocalypse was not a sound or a flash of light. It was a feeling. A sudden, inexplicable weight. A deep, leaden weariness that settled into their bones. An instant later, that weariness became a grinding, agonizing pressure. Their own bodies became their executioners. Legs that had strode across valleys like gods suddenly fractured under a load they were never designed to bear. Hearts that were magnificent engines, built to pump blood up necks that stretched to the sky, now strained against an impossible pressure, fighting a losing war to circulate life within a body that had become a prison. Spines compressed, organs ruptured. The very air would have felt thick and heavy, each breath a struggle. It was an extinction event of unparalleled horror, a death by physics. There was no enemy to fight, no shelter to be found. Reality itself had turned against them, and the simple act of standing upright became a fatal one. Their gigantism, once their greatest strength, was now their death sentence. The cataclysm was not just biological, it was architectural. The magnificent structures they had built, cities of stone designed with the grace of a lower gravity, became their tombs. Lintels weighing thousands of tons, floated into place with an elegance we can no longer comprehend, cracked and split under their own newly magnified weight. Walls fitted with impossible precision groaned, shifted, and collapsed into rubble. Their world, once a testament to their power, was now a landscape of ruin. What we see today at Baalbek and Sacsayhuaman are not pristine ruins, weathered by time alone. They are the scars of a cataclysm. They are the skeletal remains of a civilization that was not conquered or abandoned, but fundamentally, physically crushed by a shift in the very laws of its own existence. And who would survive this new, heavier world? Not the giants. Not the megafauna. Survival would be a matter of scale. The new laws favored the small, the compact, the creatures whose bodies were not an immediate liability. Our ancestors, perhaps. Smaller beings, hiding in the shadows of the collapsing world, would emerge to find the earth littered with the corpses of titans and the ruins of a civilization beyond their understanding. They would not remember the physics of what had happened. They would only know that the gods had fallen. They would pass down stories, not of a change in gravitational force, but of a great war in the heavens, of proud giants who challenged the gods and were cast down, of a paradise lost to a forgotten sin. The great crushing would fade from history and solidify into myth, a requiem in stone and legend for a world that was, quite literally, too grand to last. Of course, your geology professor, your physics teacher, and indeed the entire edifice of modern science will tell you that this is nonsense. And from their perspective, they are right to do so. The ideas we've explored exist on the furthest fringes of speculation, and they stand in direct opposition to some of the most well-established principles of our scientific age. The case against a variable gravity, and for the conventional history of our planet, is formidable, and it deserves to be heard. The primary objection is a geological one, rooted in the theory of plate tectonics. For over a century, we have gathered overwhelming evidence that the Earth's crust is broken into massive plates that drift atop a molten mantle. This theory elegantly explains the shape of our continents, the formation of mountain ranges, the patterns of earthquakes and volcanoes. It accounts for the slow, grinding continental drift that we can now measure with GPS satellites. The expanding Earth hypothesis, which we considered as a mechanism for a past lower gravity, is seen by mainstream geology not as a viable alternative, but as a relic of a pre-tectonic understanding, a theory long since falsified by the data. The story of our world's geology, we are told, is one of constant recycling and shifting, not of expansion. The case, they say, is closed. The second, and perhaps more fundamental, objection comes from physics. It is based on a principle called uniformitarianism, the idea that the same natural laws and processes that operate in our universe now, have always operated in the universe in the past. The gravitational constant is considered just that, a constant. To suggest it could change, not over cosmic timescales but within the biological history of our own planet, is an extraordinary claim that requires extraordinary evidence. And geologists will rightly point out that there is no clear, unambiguous evidence in the rock strata of such a catastrophic global event. There is no gravity line in the geological record, no definitive layer of crushed rock and bone that points to a sudden, planet-wide increase in mass. Finally, there is the frustrating and unavoidable issue of hoaxes. The legitimate inquiry into ancient gigantism has been hopelessly muddied by a deluge of fakes and forgeries. The internet is littered with manipulated images of archaeologists uncovering colossal human skeletons. These are the modern-day equivalents of carnival sideshows, designed to prey on our desire to believe. Every time one of these fakes is exposed, it further damages the credibility of any serious investigation into the subject. The scientific establishment, weary of this noise, has understandably become dismissive of any and all claims related to the topic, lumping serious anomalies in with the obvious frauds. The official story concludes that the giant skeletons are fakes, the giant footprints are misidentified dinosaur tracks, and the giant myths are simply myths. And yet, the story, as neat and tidy as it is, has holes. The official story explains many of the facts, but it doesn't explain the anomalies. It brushes them aside. Plate tectonics is a brilliant theory, but does it truly invalidate any possibility of planetary expansion or other gravitational influences in the deep past? Uniformitarianism is a foundational principle, but is it a dogmatic law or a general guideline? Science has been forced to accept paradigm shifts before, from a geocentric universe to quantum mechanics. Is it not possible that our understanding of gravity is still incomplete? The mainstream view dismisses the global consistency of giant myths as a mere psychological archetype, a common product of the human imagination. But is that a sufficient explanation for the startlingly similar details found in cultures that had no contact with one another? It asks us to believe that all our ancestors, separated by continents and oceans, were not remembering a shared past, but were all, coincidentally, lying in the exact same way. It looks at the 800-ton stones of Baalbek and the impossible joinery of Sacsayhuaman and attributes them to the brute force of people with simple tools, a solution that, for many engineers, creates more problems than it solves. The official story is comfortable, it is well established, and it explains most of what we see. But it demands that we ignore the things that don't fit. It requires that we file the most profound mysteries of our ancient world under the label "Case Closed." But the stones themselves cry out that it is not. So where does this leave us, at the end of our journey through impossible pasts? We stand at a crossroads between two stories. One is the comfortable, well-lit path of mainstream science, a story of slow, gradual change, of human ingenuity, and of universal laws that are constant and eternal. It is a good story, a powerful one, and it explains much of our world. But it requires us to politely avert our eyes from the anomalies. It asks us to believe that the 800-ton monoliths of Baalbek are merely a testament to forgotten Ropponpalli techniques, that the global, cross-cultural memory of giants is a mass coincidence of human imagination, and that the titans of the fossil record pushed the limits of biology in a world identical to our own. It is a story that is elegant, but incomplete. The other path leads into the shadows. It is an unsettling, overgrown trail, cobbled together from myth, anomalous geology, and a radical reimagining of physics. This path suggests that the world itself was once a different place, that the megaliths are not monuments to human strength, but tombstones for an age of giants. It proposes that the megafauna of the past thrived not in spite of the laws of nature, but because those laws were gentler. This story is woven together by a single, extraordinary thread, the idea that gravity, the most fundamental constant of our lives, was once a variable. It's a story that attempts to account for everything, not just the comfortable data, but the impossible outliers that whisper of a forgotten reality. We have traveled from the stones to the bones, from myth to mathematics. We have seen how the square cube law acts as a cage for biology, and how a change in gravity could unlock that cage, making the impossible plausible. We have envisioned a cataclysm not of fire or ice, but of simple, crushing weight, a silent apocalypse that ended one world and began our own. It's a narrative that feels more like science fiction than history, and yet, it offers an answer to questions that the official story leaves hanging in the air. It provides a unifying context for the world's most profound and disconnected mysteries. Perhaps the greatest mystery, then, isn't whether giants existed. It is what else we have forgotten. If a civilization so grand, a biology so colossal, could be erased from history not by war or famine, but by a fundamental shift in the operating system of reality itself, then how solid is the ground beneath our own feet? Our entire existence, every achievement, every breath, is predicated on the assumption that the rules of the universe are stable. We build our cities, plan our futures, and write our histories as if we are living in a permanent and predictable reality. We are like tenants in a house who have never thought to question the integrity of the foundation. This journey forces us to ask the most fundamental question of all: what if the foundation is not as solid as we believe? What other laws could be conditional? What other aspects of our reality are merely temporary alignments, cosmic coincidences that we have mistaken for eternal truths? We live our lives bolted to the floor of our world, so mesmerized by the drama playing out upon the stage that we never think to question the stage itself. Maybe it is time we started. The past may be more than a prologue, it may be a warning. A shadow of a forgotten world, reminding us that even the most colossal and powerful beings can be rendered extinct, not by an enemy they can fight, but by a change in the one rule they never thought could be broken. What do you think? Is the official story the complete one, or are we living among the echoes of a lost, giant world? Share your theory in the comments below. And if you want to keep questioning everything, subscribe for our next investigation.